Why we are going to use this OOP or object-oriented programming? Mainly, it is a principle of design and development of programs using a modular approach. So, if the function and the operator has an ability in order to take more than one form, then we are going to call that as a polymorphism. If the size of the program is more, then the execution time will be takes place more, so that the program will going to be executed in a slower manner. Everybody, a warm welcome to one and all. I welcome you all to the revision class of this chapter 6, that is basic concept of OOP. I am Rohini TS, lecturer, Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. So in this revision class, first we'll see about the blueprint of this chapter. So you are going to get two questions, and one is for 1 mark question. So and then you are going to get one 5 marks question. So totally you will get 2 questions, that is for 6 marks. So what and all you have to concentrate from this chapter? So you have to concentrate on 1 mark 1 question and 5 mark 1 question. So when it comes to the revision, you just need to brief out, or you just need to analyze. So if you consider the 1 mark question and if you consider the 5 mark question from this chapter, what are the topics that I wanted to learn from this chapter? That is what you have to analyze. So if I consider this chapter called object-oriented programming or a basic concept of OOP, so as we all know that what first initially we have a structured programming, right? So we have a structured programming, then it got evolved with a procedural oriented programming. So that is what we are going to call that as a POP, right? So procedural oriented programming. So in short, we will be calling that as a POP. So C is the example. C programming is the example for this procedural oriented programming. Now it got evolved and we are in the era of object oriented programming. So that is what we are going to call that as a OOP or object oriented programming. So when it comes to the concepts of object oriented programming, we got to know that what is structured programming, what is procedural oriented programming. So when it comes to the structured programming, so your main concern is regarding what step by step procedure. So we are going to have a sequential values, or we are going to have a looping, we are going to have a jump statement, selection statement. That is what structured programming is all about. Then procedural oriented programming, so in that we are mainly focusing on the procedure, we are mainly focusing on its function. So instead of we are focusing on the data. For example, 2 plus 2. So here 2 and 2 is a data or values, and this plus is a procedure or a function. When it comes to the procedural oriented programming, we will be concentrating on the type of function or a type of operation that we are doing, instead of focusing on what data we are doing. So, but when it comes to the object oriented programming, we are concentrating on the data. So, which data I'm adding? I'm not bothering about how to add. Instead of that, what I'm adding, that I will be concentrate on this object oriented programming. This is the main difference between this POP and OOP. And also we have to understand the basic concept of OOP. So as I told you, how to remember the basic concept of OOP? So OD, to whom they are saying? They are saying CID. So what it indicates? We have a objects, we have a data encapsulation, so we have a overloading, we have a data abstraction, we have a classes, inheritance, dynamic binding, and also we have message passing. This is how we are supposed to remember the concepts of OOP. That is what? OD, CID. So this is how to remember the basic concept of OOP. And also we have a mainly object. You should not forget that. So objects, we have a data encapsulation, we have a overloading, data abstraction, classes, inheritance, dynamic binding, polymorphism, and message passing. So OD, they are instructing to PM is instructing to CID. So we have a polymorphism and we have a message passing. This is how to remember the basic concept of a OOP. So you can expect one question like what is object, what is data encapsulation, what is abstraction, what is data hiding, what is inheritance, what is class, what is polymorphism, message passing. These kind of questions can be surely asked for 1 mark questions. So then ma'am, what we have to concentrate with respect to 5 mark question? So we have only 3 possibilities from this chapter. So you need to remember and you need to analyze only 3 questions for 5 marks. Which are those then? So I need to concentrate on the advantages of OOP. So what we have to concentrate? So we have to think about the advantages of OOP than this POP, and we have to remember regarding the limitations or disadvantages of OOP. Then without missing, you have to understand the applications of OOP. So what do you have to understand? Applications of OOP. So remember, dear students, advantages is different and this application is different. How can I differentiate it? Advantages in the sense, what are the benefits that we are getting out of this concept? Applications in the sense, where we are implementing, in which field we are implementing this concept. That is the difference between this advantage as well as the applications. Then what is the main, one more 5 mark question, that is difference between OOP and POP. Only these are the possibilities of this chapter. So what you have to remember, what is procedural oriented programming or what is object oriented programming? That is 1 mark question. Then you have to understand all the concepts with its definition. That definition is more than enough. Or all these 5 definition can be asked for 5 marks also. So you have to analyze in which way we can get the complete 6 marks from this chapter, or they can ask you 1 mark question like what is object, data encapsulation, that I have already discussed. So when it comes to the 5 marks question, only these 4 questions, most of the time they won't ask about the disadvantages. There could be a possibility of asking advantages and disadvantages together for a 5 marks. So no need to worry much regarding this disadvantage. Okay, so mainly you have to concentrate advantages, applications as well as the difference between OOP and POP. Let me get into the today's session, that is regarding object oriented programming. Already we have discussed in my concept class. So if you have missed, you have to get back to the concept class videos. So when it comes to the OOP, why we are going to use this OOP or object oriented programming? Mainly, it is a principle of design and development of programs using a modular approach. So this OOP will be used in order to design or in order to develop and to implement the program which is based on the modular approach. Or else you can also write one more definition here. And now we'll see about the basic concept. Basic concept are a characteristics of object-oriented programming. Both are same. So when it comes to the basic concept of OOP, how to remember? I told you, right? OD. Who are saying? PM is saying to CID. So this is what is the code in order to remember the basic concept of OOP. So that what is the first concept we have here? Object. So can I consider this table as an object? Yes. Can I consider a student as an object? Yes. How can I say it is an object? So this object is a collection of data members and associated member function. If I say anything as an object, it must have a characteristics and it has to perform some of the operation. Then what is class? It is a collection of objects. So if I have a collection of number of pens like this, then that is a collection of digital pens. So class is nothing but it is a collection of objects that have a identical properties and common behavior and shared relationship. So this is what the definition of a class. Then what about this data abstraction? You all are familiar with WhatsApp. You all are familiar with washing machine operation. That means you know how to operate the washing machine. You know how to operate the laptop. But do you know how it is working internally? Somehow no, right? So you know how to use WhatsApp, but do you know how the code has been written, how to write the code for that WhatsApp? Somehow no, right? So why I'm saying this, data abstraction in the sense, they're just giving the content what you are required. So instead of giving you the background details that is related to data abstraction, so that it refers to the process of representing the essential features by hiding or without including the background details or an explanation. That is data abstraction. Then what is data encapsulation? I have a data, I have a function. If I combine both together, then that will be the data encapsulation. So that the wrapping up, so someone of you will going to miss this W, so don't do that missing. So here it is wrapping up of the data and functions into a single unit. I'm not only taking data as a single unit. So while writing, you have to mention we are combining both data and functions into a single unit. I will be calling that as a class. So it is considered as what? Data encapsulation. Next, we'll see about the inheritance. So you just imagine a parent and you. Okay. So if I say parent and if I say you, so most of the time we are going to inherit the features, or we are going to inherit some characteristic of our parent, right? So someone will going to say you have a same hair structure of your mom, you have the same eye color of your father, your nose is looking like your grandfather. That means what? We are acquiring the features from the existing class. So in the same way, we have two classes. One is base class and one is derived class or a new class. So if one class is acquiring the properties from another class, then that will be termed as what? Inheritance. So the process of acquiring or forming a new class from an existing class will be termed as inheritance. Next, what we have? Overloading. What is this overloading? Overloading of food? No. So what we are learning here, overloading allows the object to take a different meaning depending upon a context. For example, if you are in a college, you are going to play a role of a student, but when you get back to your home, you are going to play a role of a daughter or a son. You will be playing a role of sister, brother, like that. That means what? You are same, but based on the situation or based on the context, you are changing your behavior. In the same way, if this operator of this object changing there or having more than one meaning, which is depends on the different context or a situation, then that will be termed as what? Overloading. That can be of two types. One is operator overloading and another one is function overloading. So we will be learning about this function overloading in a different chapter itself, right? So next we'll see about the polymorphism. So here poly is nothing but many. Morphism in the sense forms. So which is taking many forms? Chameleon, right? But we are not talking about the chameleon. We are talking about the objects and we are talking about the operator and function. So if the function and the operator has an ability in order to take more than one form, then we are going to call that as a polymorphism. Then what is dynamic binding here? So if I say binding, that is what? Grouping or collection, or we are combining so some data with another data. When we are doing this with respect to the execution of a program, or when the runtime of a program is taking place, if we are doing that binding and all, then that will be considered as what? Dynamic binding. So that dynamic binding is the process of linking the procedure called to a specific sequence of code or function at the runtime. So you have to remember this runtime here. Runtime or at the time of its execution of a program. That will be termed as dynamic binding. So next what we have? Message passing. To do the gossips. So we are going to pass some gossips. We are going to do the message passing. But who is going to do the gossip in the object? You just imagine I have n number of objects in my class, or I have 10 numbers of objects in my class. I wanted to exchange the data from one object to another object. Then which concept I am supposed to use? That is what? Message passing. So message passings are used in order to send the values, or in order to send the name of an object. I wanted to send some parameter. I wanted to tell what the object needs to done. That is what message passing is all about. So it will going to specify the name of the object and the name of the function and the content. That is the information what needs to be sent. That will going to be sent as a message from one object to another object. This is regarding what? Concepts of object-oriented programming, or characteristics of object-oriented programming. Next, what and all you have to remember? Advantages, limitations or disadvantages, then applications of OOP. So these three are very important questions for 5 marks. Along with that, you have to concentrate on the difference between OOP and POP. So now I have some more important and most frequently asked question regarding 1 mark and 5 marks. We'll see now. So what is the first question? Define object-oriented programming. Already we have discussed, right? So OOP is the principle of design and development of programs using modular approach. Or else you can write one more definition here. And I told you, right, regarding what characteristics or basic concept of OOP, all the definitions is important for 1 marks. So you can see here what is data encapsulation and what is dynamic binding. All these kind of questions will be asked for 1 mark. And also mention any one concept of OOP. I have given an idea, right? OD, then PM is saying to CID. So you can write any one of this. So don't write OD like this. Okay, you have to mention what O is all about, what is D is all about. So you can mention any one in order to get 1 mark. So objects, I have a classes, inheritance, polymorphism, message passing, dynamic binding. All these, out of this you can write any one in order to get 1 mark. Then what is data abstraction in OOP? So it mainly a process of representing only the essential features without including the background details. And also you can get a question like define class and object, can be a different question. Okay, so define object can be asked or define class can be asked. So don't get confused. You have to write what is object, what is class. So all these kind of questions will be important for 1 marks. Out of this, you can expect any question for 1 marks. All the concepts definition is important for 1 marks, and what is OOP, that definition is also important for 1 marks. This is regarding 1 mark questions. We'll see about the 5 marks questions here. Write any 5 applications of object oriented programming. Surely you are going to get this in your examination. Without missing this question, you have to read, or that means you have to understand. So application they are asking, don't get confused with a question called advantage and application. Application is a field where we are using. So where I can use this OOP? So we can use in the computer graphics applications, CAD CAM software, object oriented database, user interface like Windows, and we can use in the real-time system, simulation and modeling for the purpose of artificial intelligence and expert system, and in the client server system. Out of this, if you have written any 5 points, so that will going to help you out in order to fetch 5 marks. Okay, this is very easy. Don't miss this question. This is what applications of OOP. We'll see the next question, that is what advantages. So when you are writing an advantages of OOP, at the time you have to concentrate on its concept. For example, if I say object, why object is important? In order to represent the real world elements or an entity I can say. And what if I wanted to use inheritance? What is the need of having the inheritance? Mainly in order to reuse the code. That means the development of a code will going to be faster, because I don't want it to write the same code again from the scratch. That is what the advantage is. With keeping those concepts of OOP or characteristics of OOP, so you have to write the advantage. So first, what is the advantage? The programs are modularized based on the concept of classes and object. So we are going to have a modular approach based on the classes and object concept, and linking code and object allows the related objects to share common code. So this will going to reduce the code duplication, and code reusability will going to be enhanced. And also creation and implementation of OOP code is easy, and that will reduces the software development time. It will be based on the inheritance concept. And also we have the concept of data abstraction, separate object specification and object implementation. So data abstraction, they are not giving all the junk data or all the background details. So if you are getting all the background details, somehow that looks like hectic, right? But if we have only plain UI, or if I have only the content what I wanted to work with, then that will be easy in order to work. So that the data abstraction will going to separate the object specification and object implementation. And also data encapsulation. So here data and function both encapsulated together. So what it means? Third party or non-member function cannot access those data. So that it will improve the security of your data, and it also improves in order to do the data hiding. So that data encapsulated along with the function, so it will external non-function or a non-member function cannot access or modify the data. That provides a security. And also it will be easier to develop the complex software because this complexity can be reduced with the help of this inheritance concept. And also this OOP can communicate through message passing, which makes interface description with outside system very simple. So by keeping all the concepts of OOP, or by keeping all the characteristics of OOP, you have to write any 5 advantages. So these are the advantages of OOP. And also you can see the limitations. So if you are getting a limitations, this is nothing but what disadvantages. Okay, don't get confused with the keywords that they are going to give you. So limitations are nothing but disadvantages, or you can also consider this as a cons. So pros are nothing but advantages, cons are nothing but disadvantage. So what are the disadvantages? Mainly related to its large program size. So size will going to be increased in the OOP than in any other programming language, and also slower program. If the size of the program is more, then the execution time will be takes place more, so that the program will going to be executed in a slower manner. And it is not at all suitable for all the types of programming. So for example, I can't implement everything with a concept of OOP, so that it is not so suitable for all the types of programs. And to convert a real world problem into an object oriented model is difficult. Whatever I am seeing as a real world object, everything can't be converted into programming with the help of this OOP. Somehow that is difficult, and there is no standardization in this OOP. So that means you can use concept however you wanted to use. So that means there is no standardization. There is no standardization of writing a code or developing a code or testing a code. Somehow that will be considered as a disadvantage. And here the development, debugging and testing tools are not at all standardized. That is also one of the disadvantage. If you don't have a traffic rules, then there will be more accidents. In the same way, here if you don't have any standardization, somehow it will going to create more kind of ambiguity or more kind of confusions with respect to the programming. So this polymorphism and dynamic binding also require processing time. So this due to overload of a function calls during the runtime, it will take more time in order to execute, so that the slower will going to be the execution. And also the classes are overly generalized. If it is not specific, or if it is not standardized, somehow if it is generalized, so you can use the concept however you want. That could also be considered as one of the disadvantage or a limitations. I hope you understood. Next, you can see the difference between OOP and POP. So procedural oriented programming and object oriented programming. So mainly this large programs are divided into smaller program known as functions. We are going to call that procedural oriented programming, which will rely on the function, but here it will be considered as an object in the OOP. And also the data is not hidden, because we are not using any of the concept called visibility, or we are not using any of the concept called accessing mode. So there is no data hidden and can be accessed by external function. But here data is hidden and cannot be accessed by external function. Security will be there in the OOP, and it will follow the top down approach. It will going to follow bottom up approach. Then we have data may communicate with each other through function. Then that object will going to communicate with each other with a function. So here we are giving more weightage to the object. Here we are giving more weightage to the type of a function that we are using. Okay. And it mainly emphasis on a procedure rather than the data. But here it mainly emphasis on the data rather than procedure. As they take an example of 2 plus 2. So here I am bothering about what kind of data I am taking. But if I work with the procedural oriented programming, I will take care about what kind of operation that I am doing. Whether I am doing addition, subtraction, that function will going to be concentrated on POP, but on what data I am doing that function will be concentrated on OOP. I hope you all understood. This is regarding the revision of this chapter 6, that is basic concept of OOP. Let me meet you in the next session with a revision of further chapter. Until that, keep learning, keep on growing. Thank you.